Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to CxO Global Forum. As you all know that we are a knowledge sharing platform and we bridge organization into greater exposure within their respective industry. This is Sidra Aslam and today we have our honorable guest Zouhair Khaliq with us. Assalamu alaikum sir and thank you so much for joining us today.
Walaikum Assalam. How are you?
अच्छा आज हम थोड़ी सी आपकी जर्नी के बारे में बात करेंगे। सबसे पहले तो शुरू करते हैं योर एजुकेशनल बैकग्राउंड एंड योर चाइल्डहुड बैकग्राउंड और सब चीज़ें वहाँ से हम शुरू करेंगे।
Gee, thank you so much for having me on the show, Sidra. My educational background is a bit checkered. My father moved to Saudi Arabia when I was 2 years old, so I did about 5 or 6 years in an American international school there. Came back to Pakistan and attended St. Patrick's High School in Karachi, then Islamabad Model School in G6 at the time. And then for my O's and A levels, I went to the UK. Because again, my father was moving around. He was an international civil servant. And I did my A levels in the UK. Then I qualified as an accountant. So original mera background ye hai. And then came back to Pakistan after a 10-year stint in the UK in 1984.
Okay, very nice. So you have been to so many countries also,
जी I have.
right?
It's wanderlust जो कहते हैं ना कि बहुत जगह जा चुका हूँ.
बिल्कुल बिल्कुल। तो फिर हाउ डू अब ये टीम अप तक का सफर किस तरह हुआ? हाउ डू यू फाउंड द टीम अप वेंचर्स? इसके बारे में बताएं।
So it's a long journey. I think we have to start. My background was not telecom and technology. I did my first year after my graduation. I worked with PwC Consulting, or AF Ferguson as it's locally called. Moved to a company called ICI Pakistan Limited at the time, which was the blue chip company in those days, 1984 की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ. And I worked with them for 7 years in various finance capacities. So as chief internal auditor, then as head of finance, and then as CFO of their soda ash business. Sort of got bored with chemicals and bulk chemicals and all of the rest of it. And there was something which constant travel wali cheez hai, I think wo kahin kick in kar gayi. And I actually moved to a company called Instaphone in those days. And Instaphone was one of two companies which had just introduced mobile services in Pakistan. This is 1990. And again, I realized the culture and the work ethic and the ethos at Instaphone was not what I had imagined. So I actually quit after 10 months of work. And for 3 or 4 months, I had no job. I had no idea मैं क्या करूँगा. I kept thinking कि बड़ी गलती हो गई है ICI छोड़ के. But then I got approached by another company, which was Motorola, and they were looking to start a new company, which became known by the name of Mobilink afterwards, and is today called Jazz. And they were looking for a finance person who had worked in telecoms and was a Pakistani. So I ticked 3 different boxes, and I was hired, and I became officially employee number 1 at Mobilink. There were a team who were putting all of it together before I arrived. But on the payroll, I was employee 1, and wahan se start hua sara journey for the telecom industry. And I spent three and a half years. Then I was asked to come to London with Motorola. And I spent about 6 years in London, helping launch a number of other countries, including Jordan, later Mobinil in Egypt. And then Motorola decided to divest of all its properties. And I was in a very fortunate position. I was head of operations for Europe, Middle East, Africa. And I convinced a gentleman called Naguib Sawiris in Egypt, whose board I sat on because I had helped launch Mobinil in Egypt, to see if he wanted to buy some of the assets that Motorola was now divesting. And Pakistan happened to be one of them. And a new journey started after that, because he then, basically said, come and work for me. And I did that. And a year later, after I had done that, I found myself back in Pakistan in 2003. And Mobilink at the time, along with Paktel and Instaphone, and Uphone had just been launched a year earlier. Total number of subscribers in the customers in the country was 2 million customers after 10 years of mobile services. And Mobilink had 1 million of those. The rest of the 3 companies shared the other million between them. So it was just one of those things that, things were changing, new policies came in, and we decided probably we're going to go for a land grab, and mobile networks are now going to flourish. And in the next 5.5 years, we went from 1 million customers at Mobilink to 32 million customers. So it was quite a very fast ride to the moon, as a rocket ride. Uh, Meanwhile, Instaphone and Parktel sort of faded away, and in their place came Telenor, and then afterwards Warid Telecom, and then also Zong later on, the China Mobile company as well.
Right.
So a very hectic, very frenzied sort of 5 or 6 years where total subscribers grew from 2 million to 72 million. And we had 32 million of those, and the other four companies shared the 40 million. So again, it was a very interesting time.
True,
I
true.
went back to Cairo, and I started doing mobile digital banking at the time for the group. So we launched what is now known as Mobilink Microfinance Bank in Pakistan. We also
Okay.
launched Banglalink in Bangladesh. Sorry, the mobile. Sorry, the finance side of it. Also, a mobile banking in Greece and then in Tunisia. And that was quite an exciting time. But then again, the Orascom started selling out at the time. And so I left and went back to London. And I was approached by a gentleman called Sheikh Nayan bin Mubarak, who owned Warid Telecom and Wateen Telecom. And he asked me to come and restructure the companies because they were not doing too well. I agreed to do that I did that for 3 years. We turned around Wateen Telecom. Warid Telecom, we made into a profitable organization, which was eventually then bought out by Mobilink at the time. And so they
Yeah.
consolidated the base of both of those. So again, that was around the time that I thought I need to do something more than telecoms. And so I joined a company called the GSM Association. Again, not far from telecom, because they are the trade and industry body for telecom. But my job was mobile for development. So I headed a division called Mobile for Development. And our job was basically to help seed and encourage and mentor young technology startups whose product would eventually come onto the mobile networks. I did that for a year. I managed 150 million US dollars. And
Okay.
I left because of the huge bureaucracy and the very slow pace of what was happening there. It was one of those organizations. And
Yeah.
so I moved on, and it left me with this feeling inside me that this is something that I want to do. And that was the genesis of Team Up, Joe Upnate. So it's a bit of a long answer to a question. And
No,
that
no, no, no.
left
Yeah.
inside me, said, I want to do this. Also, at that time, I was not doing any full-time jobs. I was mostly on non-executive boards, advisory roles with a lot of startups. I had invested between 2010 and 2015, 16. I had invested in about 6 different startup companies in the technology space. And there was this sort of little thing inside me which said, this is what I want to do. Having worked in, I think I may have mentioned earlier, in various countries, including the US, the UK, um, uh, Egypt and France and Jordan, Algeria, Tunisia, Bangladesh, obviously Pakistan. I
Okay.
I was left with a very gut feeling that some of the brightest people and the most hardworking people are right here in Pakistan, mashallah. So I came back. I moved out of my very nice home in London and moved
Okay.
back to Pakistan in 2017 with the idea of Team Up. Team Up then bid for something called the National Incubation Center. It was the first of now 8 national incubation centers in Pakistan. Um, the idea was basically to train, incubate, mentor, and encourage people in the technology business who were basically devising products and services to serve now what is about 195 million mobile customers in Pakistan. And 100, I think 30, 140 million of these are wireless internet enabled as well. So it's a very flourishing business. Imagine carrying 140 million people is twice the population of the United Kingdom, and just in Pakistan, right? So, and maybe 3 times the population of France or Germany, nearly. So I think I was very, very convinced that this is the new future. This is the new thing that we need to be doing. And so I came back. I was a co-founder of Team Up and the National Incubation Center. And over the last 7 years, that's what we've tried to do, is to encourage entrepreneurs in the technology space to launch new startups, new products, new services, new apps. And I think if you look at Pakistan in 2020,
Yeah.
barely $77 million of VC funding came into the country. In 2021, that number went up to $382 million. So
Wow.
5 times the same price. And in 2022, which was a full year of COVID and other
Yeah, yeah.
world events, including the Ukraine war and the regime change in Pakistan and so on, we still got $380 million again. So over that period of about 2.5 years, Pakistan had incoming venture capital funding of about 830 million US dollars. So I thought this was the thing to do. And that's when I also formed Team Up Ventures, which is a venture capital fund, which was intended to basically invest in startups and encourage them on their growth paths. 2023 has been a bit of a difficult year because of all the fallout from, I guess, COVID, the Ukraine war, the circumstances in Pakistan at the moment. So it's a little bit slower, but yes, that's the story of Team Up so far.
That's so inspiring. And जब आपसे बात हो रही थी, you were the one of the pioneers of all the you have seen all the telcos growing. I mean, now
G.
they're big names right now, but you have seen them, growing, and then how you come out with Team Up. This is so inspiring, and I know, and I see how they are working, and they always inspire us, our generation also, and new people also. We have a hope.
Absolutely.
When I बिल्कुल, जब मैं बात करी सारी चीज़ों के बारे में, तो होप से मैं आपसे भी बात करना चाहूँगी कि हू रियली रियली इंस्पायर्ड यू, हम सबकी ज़िंदगियों में कोई ना कोई इंस्पिरेशन ज़रूर होती है जो हमें मोटिवेट रखती है कि वी वांट टू डू दिस फॉर दिस रीज़न. सो वो इंस्पिरेशन क्या थी?
I wouldn't name one person. I think there would be a list, very, very long list. But if I had to name a few people, I would name someone like Munawar Hamid. He was my boss at ICI for many years, and later the chairman and CEO of ICI. An extremely wonderful, very competent, visionary person who I learned a lot from. When I went and worked in the UK, I had a boss called Craig Thompson, again, somebody who I've always admired, and again, a great inspiration. And, there's so many others around me who've inspired me over the years. And obviously people like, somebody like a Steve Jobs, who's just made a complete difference in how we live our daily lives, or not sometimes just because we are staring at the iPhone too much. So I think all of those combined, and so many others. I think what is very, very important for me is that I always look beyond just doing a job. It was about how can this make a difference to other people's lives. And in fact, उस ज़माने में at Mobilink, we rebranded ourselves from reshaping communication to reshaping lives, because that was our inspiration. That's what we wanted to do. And I think to an extent, at looking back on it, we did quite a bit in terms of influencing and reshaping other people's lives as well. So I think that is always very meaningful. And I would argue that with anybody who's looking to build a career, that it's not just about the job. It's not just about the titles or the money. It's also about how you can make an impact on other people's lives.
Yeah, what are you giving back to society? This is very important, right? True.
Absolutely.
So obviously, when you had your journey was so inspiring also, but you must be facing some struggles that we don't know, right? Because so we want to know about that also, to be more inspired, and to get more courage. So we want to know your struggles in
So
this journey.
I think, yes, I think it's always assumed that people who are sitting comfortably in a nice chair in a nice office obviously just got there, just zoomed in, but that's not always true. I've had my share of failures. I've lost jobs about 4 or 5 times in my life, where people made me redundant or they wound up the company. And so for 3, 4, 5 months at a time, I would have nothing. And I would just keep focused on how do we get to the next stage. I ran, I think I didn't mention this part, but between my transition um, uh, to Orascom from Motorola, for a year I ran a company called wcities.com in the UK. I was the chief operating officer. The CEO was a younger person. He was the founder, but he had no operational experience as such. And I was brought in even then as the gray hair in the bargain. We were ahead of our time in terms of the product and the service we were giving. The company failed in 2002 because the entire market collapsed, one of those economic crashes that we've seen in the last year and a bit.
Okay.
And again, the founder flew out. He didn't want to deal with it. I had to lay off 400 people, wind up the company, bring in the liquidators and all of that. I hadn't been paid in 8 months because we didn't have the money. So I was
Okay.
absolutely broke at the time. Subsequently, too, as I mentioned, I invested in 6 startups. 5 of them I never saw again. They failed and I lost the money. But 9 years later, one of them came back to me and he said, "We're going for a bigger round, Zouhair, and would you like to stay in or would you like to exit?" And I said, "Well, what's the exit?" And they said, "It's a 10x exit." And I said, "I'll have the check right now. Thank you." So it's also about, persistence. It's about patience, and uh, just being very, very focused on keeping going and making the next thing happen.
Of course, true. Patience is like key, right? Patience is very, very important. And thank you so much for sharing this also with us. So, as we talk about digital Pakistan, we have seen this term so many times, the digital Pakistan. So, what do you think that Pakistan is going there? We are not still familiar to digital payments. We do not use digital payment methods or modes, and we do not like buying groceries online or checking ourselves online to the doctors and all. So what do you think about the future of digital Pakistan?
So I think, look, I mean, the reason I came back 7 years ago was because I firmly believe that Pakistan will go digital and it will happen. It's a huge market. It's there to be taken. Unfortunately, a lot of bureaucracy stands in the way. I'm not just about the civil bureaucracy. I'm talking about the mindset in in our banks, the central bank, the SECP, the FBR. So many things that we can just adopt from other countries in the world and say, let's make it easy. Unfortunately, that is our biggest barrier right now. As far as talent is concerned, all the things that you mentioned, people are already doing. Whether
Yeah.
it's in medtech or it's in health tech, education, online, fintech is happening, e-commerce is happening a big way, and a lot of it got, in fact, ironically, a boost from the COVID days because people stopped going
Yeah.
out. People adapted to new technology and said, "Look, I can order this online. I don't need to expose myself," and so on. So I think all of that has taken momentum. But honestly speaking, I think if some of these hindrances and barriers and things could be removed as well, things would move that much faster. I'll give you a little example. Yesterday, I went to open a bank account, and it's taken me 4 weeks to just convince the banker to actually sit in front and have me sign the forms. Once I'd signed the forms, I asked how long it will take, and they said, "It will take a week to open the account." And I said, "Oh, so I'll have an app and access on digital?" And he said, "No, sir, that will take another 3 to 4 weeks."
True.
And it's just,
So some of the days, I mean,
because of,
our digital banks or digital apps of banks, some of the days they are not working. So we have so many. I mean, we have to take a little more time to be there, right? I mean,
yes,
um,
it's
for
also
the
to do
banking
with
sector and for other
also
sectors.
to do with the legislation around all of these areas, which we're still stuck in a very different time zone.
Yeah.
Need to move ahead. I'll give you an example. A similar, 15 years ago, I opened a company in
Yeah.
London, and it took me 20 minutes online to establish the company. I got my certificate of incorporation, my memorandum and articles and everything, literally in about 20 to 25 minutes. And 10 minutes later, I got an email from one of the top banks in the UK who said, we are aware that you have a new established company. How can we help you open a bank account? And that took another 20 minutes. And that was 15 years
Yeah.
ago. That was 15 years ago. So I think what I'm saying is we have a lot of catch up to do. The
True,
potential
true.
is all here. People are working very
Yeah.
hard at it. So many founders of tech companies that I've come across over the 7 or 8 years that I've been back here. It's always a pleasure to meet them and see how visionary and how hardworking they are. So it's a question of some legislation, some mindsets, and also once we have another round of stability in terms of economic and political
Yeah.
events as well. I think that that huge VC funding that is right now dried up a little will start coming back as well. So I remain optimistic. It's just, as I said, it's about
Yeah,
patience and
hopeful.
keeping a focus, inshallah.
Yes, yes. So thank you so much for, sharing your journey. If you want to say something about CXO Global Forum, and you can say a few words about CXO Global Forum.
So I watched Kamal and the team, work very, very hard over about 4 years now, 4.5 years since they really came at it. And I think it's absolutely phenomenal, mashallah, what you guys have done. The way you've put together the entire forum, the very, very talented and very dedicated team that you yourselves are at CXO Global. But also, I think you've managed to bring together such interesting people from around the business world. And I think kudos to all of you for doing that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time and sharing your inspirational journey, I must say. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Thank
Thank you so much for
thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you. So thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz. Thank you.
Allah Hafiz.